Hello everyone, and welcome to behind the scenes of Dark Souls 3 battles. I wanted to do this for Pokemon Let's Go, but unfortunately my previous computer kinda killed itself, so I wasn't able to do so. I'm currently working on trying to get those files as well, but I thought it'd be interesting to make a video on like what goes into the process of our battle series, at least from what the format is now. And since Dark Souls 3 battles is now done, I thought we could use the final episode for a good example on how to explain things. So as you see, I use After Effects to edit our videos, and while there's probably better methods for rendering purposes, but it takes like 10 to 15 hours to render a video because I have to render it through Adobe Media Encoding. And there's, again, probably a better way to do so, but this is just what I'm doing currently. This is what I found when first experimenting with this stuff. And who knows, the future series may be a lot easier for me to edit once I find out how it goes. So let's just jump right into this. So for example, we have the intro, you know, like going through everything, and I just used scenes, like all the cutscenes from Dark Souls 3, just kind of getting a video or just recording the scenes from my PlayStation on like every single cutscene in Dark Souls 3, and kind of used the best, what I think works for each scene, because the song that we used for the intro and outro is, if you could tell, was the final battle with the Soul of Cinder. As no, that's not it. Yeah, like just the audio clip of the Soul of Cinder song. I'm not particularly sure what it's legitimately called. Someone could probably tell me, but since it's very hard to get a remix of Dark Souls 3 music, or at least what I felt fit the mood for this series, I just thought it was probably best to use the final boss music. And I can't create music myself. I don't know really much about it. I'm just an editor. So anyway, as I edited this in Premiere separately, I also used this, as you guys saw with the solar eclipse, the Dark Souls 3 logo, and then battles under it. The battles is its own text. I don't particularly remember on what text I specifically used. I could probably open it up in Photoshop and tell you specifically, but at the moment we're going through all the details of other stuff. So the Dark Souls 3 logo is exactly that. I just used a PNG for the logo, and the solar eclipse here actually was a plugin that I actually found. Oh no. Oh, there it goes. So it's called Saber, and it's actually a really neat tool that is really fun to use. Let's see if I let's see. I think the thing's at the bottom here. Yeah. So if you go into intro, yeah, so here's the MP4 of the footage that I was talking about earlier, and like just Dark Souls 3 PNG file and stuff like that. Now with this, with Saber, let's see, let's go into the things here. Yeah, so what Saber lets me do is I can click like Solar Wave or something like that, and like change it accordingly to however I want it to look. So like, let's not doing it here. Oh, it's because I'm clicking on the wrong one. Haha! Here we go. Yeah, so it'll change it to whatever I want it to look like. Like, I could have made it look like meteors, or whatever I was showing earlier, like electricity. And it's like this neat little, like, plugin that I found. And it's honestly just, like, super fun to just mess with. Especially since you can change it to, like, yellow smoke, or, like, replicate, or however you want it to be. And I just found it perfect for the solar eclipse, because if you go into, like, the Dark Souls 3 stuff, Dark Souls 3 is all about ashes and embers and solar eclipse at the very end of the game. So I thought it would work perfectly for what we were trying to set the mood for. And as you can tell with the intro too, with the little embers, you could also see it in the background too. So if I go to, like, here, yeah, there's like little embers in the background. It's kind of hard to see with this, but yeah, like these little things right here, I put it here, I put it in our little embers thing. And how I kind of made it is I just used a black solid and with CC particle world. And for those who don't understand these things, I'll try the best I can to explain this. I'm not the best at explaining, but yeah, I just looked up a bunch of videos on how to, like, make ember particles and stuff like that, and these are kind of the birth rate, death rate, other technical things that I just messed with just to make it seem or feel right to what I wanted it to be. And like I said, it's in the it's in the episode background. It's used for our little ember, or like whenever we ember and get more health and stuff like that. And we can just actually, let's jump into, like, the whole embers thing. So I positioned it just so that, like, for me right here, here's mine on the left, here's Sunshine's on the right. They're exactly the same thing. I like flipped them just to make sure, like, symmetry and stuff like that, just because that matters a lot to me. And I just kind of used, like, two little tiny embers things and, like, shaped it to make it look like it was rising from the emblem itself. And so if I play it right here, well, if it doesn't freeze up first, yeah, it's doing a little animation. And I actually spanned it to 40 minutes, and this is honestly only due to, like, each episode is around 25 to 35 minutes, so I just went the extra mile to be safe and extended these to 40 minutes. Same with the background, just so if an episode goes too long, I can just cut down the footage of this and use it however I like. And with the regular icons, this is honestly just two blank PNGs of what you usually see in the corner of the game where a covenant would be. And it wasn't too hard. It didn't hurt my computer much, just because these are just PNGs. There's no animation to it. And so if we go to the background here, as you can see, I implemented the solar eclipse as well. The little solar eclipse up here is actually the same exact thing that I use in the intro and outro, just because it's easier to just copy and paste that since the animation is already there. I just have to change the size in accordance to what the background is. And also the background itself is actually just a PNG that I took from the game, that I felt was best fit for the background of the series. The image actually was taken from the not Dark Souls, what am I saying? It was taken from the Soul Cinder fight, funny enough. And it was just kind of like angled and zoomed in just to make it have a better position, just so it fits well with the background itself. And with the solar eclipse here, if I click onto, well, that'd be nice if this didn't work, but yeah, if I clicked onto this, well, if it let me, but yeah, I kind of I made another saber solar eclipse thing just to make like a little tail of the solar eclipse, because in the game itself, when you get far enough into the game, if I can spell solar right, here we go. Yeah, it has its own like little like tail drooping down near the end of the game, so I wanted to kind of just imitate that to fit the mood of the game itself. And I think it turned out really well, especially with the program that I used, or I should say plugin. And like I said, I just messed around with it a little bit. Now we can, like, for the stats at the bottom here, what I did was I edited these in Photoshop, so I just kind of took the PNGs of each one of the stats, lined them up accordingly. So this is like, in the game, in the menu, it goes just one way down. So I kind of went from top to bottom all the way to the end here, and put a little boxes for the main weapon, the sub weapon, the text for the main weapon, text for the main sub weapon, and also the stats, which I added there for people who were curious on like what kind of builds we were doing for the series. I just went dex and health just to be safe. Probably should win endurance, but it's whatever. And Sunshine kind of went a mix between stuff. He kind of basically did the same thing. When he was using pyromancy, I was surprised that he didn't like increase intelligence and faith, but granted, for what he was doing, it made a lot of sense. And also, these are where the ashes of the four lords are, and I kind of had them separate in here and placed the PNGs accordingly, and I kind of made it in, so if we go back to the episode, for the outro, or not outro, yeah, for like this little thing, as you can see, I had the ashes labeled under either Sunshine or myself, just to figure out, I know, which one is which. And whenever, like throughout the series, if we didn't have them, they'd be put into a silhouette, which I made it so it was just like, yeah, kind of like a negative effect in the settings. Which how I did that was just kind of, yeah, see, I made it into a subtract setting down here, just so that they could seem like we didn't have them yet. Sadly, I didn't notice or fade in when we got the Abyss Watchers. That was my bad. Sunshine mentioned that to me, and I was like, oh crap, I completely missed that, it was just all my bad. I seem to have a knack of messing things up at the beginning of the series, beginning to middle, near the end, everything's all together, luckily. But anyway, with all these details, let's get into the actual editing portion of it. So what I did after the initial intro, I kind of had the footage here fade out a little bit. Oops, I didn't want to do that. So if I open it up here and go to transform, oh, I guess I did that in a separate thing here. Yeah, so what I did was I just messed with the opacity, put like keyframes there in the intro itself. So if I go into... Yeah, so if I go into this and just highlight it and go, oh, that's not it. Oopsies. What did I do? Whatever, I'm not saving it. Yeah, so opacity is down here. And if you, yeah. So I just kind of made it fade from 0 to 100 and then 100 to 0 down here. Probably like 22:17. It took, yeah, about 2-3 seconds for it to fade out, just so it had the lasting effect into it and had the little embers be at the end here. And going back to the editing, I also made it so that if you see here, I faded everything that was required from 0 to 100 in the opacity, just so everything faded in correctly. Same with the audio and the song that we were using, just to make sure that things worked correctly. And if you were curious about, so what happens every time that one of us ember, if I open up the opacity here, I think Sunshine's is a better reference, just because he uses it a lot, which is fine. It doesn't upset me. It's just a little tedious to edit, especially since I gotta make sure that I don't miss every little bit of detail. So if you see here, when he clicked it on the menu, I kind of go frame by frame to before it happens. So like right about here, if you notice in the top little corner here, it goes from not embered in the little icon in the corner to embered. And the frame after that, the health starts to increase. So that's kind of like the reference that I like to do for this, and have it fade in for 11 frames. Yeah, I think I determined it to be 11 frames. And there we go. So if I click this,
buy it.
Yeah, so as you can see, just kind of having it there. It's kind of funny to do, especially with the Solar Cinder about to stab me right in the chest. Ugh. But yeah, every time that would happen, I would just do that exact thing and just do the exact opposite for when we'd lose the ember, which, wow, actually, Sunshine took quite a long time to die. It's like I'm saying that he should die more often. I mean, it'd benefit me in the series, but you know. But yeah, whenever we would die or something like that, we would just, yeah. So I would wait until the fading in like bar for "you died" in Dark Souls to show up to kind of indicate it fading away. And boy, is it funny to just go like, okay, so when do I just edit? Oh, one of us is dead. Okay, so this is where I put it. And I'd add like a marker with like control number pad or something like that. I don't remember what it was, honestly. Oh boy. Yeah, so I'd either go into like layer, markers, and then add marker. Oh, it's numpad, asterisk. Okay. So yeah, every time that would happen when scrubbing through the footage, it would just like add a little asterisk there. Yeah, so. And it's just very nice to keep track. And let's go into the wow, brain isn't functioning right now. The stats for Dark Souls 3 as well. It's really just the same thing as I did for the Embers, except that with the text here, the text is actually a PNG. So the text that I use here is not actual text files. It's rather just a PNG that I made in Photoshop just to make it easier. Well, in reality, it's probably easier just to make it text, but that's just kind of what I did. And so if I go to right around here, I believe. Yeah, right about up here. Because yeah, if as you can tell, here's the different times that our stats change, depending on like who it is. Honestly, I just kind of go with, oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. I kind of have the idea of who's doing what. And it was a little tricky at first to figure out, especially since the fading was a little weird, as you can tell for some episodes. So like every time that happened, it was weird. So when Pokemon Let's Go battles, I didn't have this issue, but in this one it specifically just didn't want to work correctly. So what I would do is I'd fade in the text on top. So as you can tell, it's double layered right now and it doesn't look the greatest, but it's like by 5 frames, so in reality it's really hard to pick up. And then I just fade it out, and there you go, the stats are changed. So like from 29, 14, 28, whatever Sunshine had, to 30, 20, 14, 29, and I'm assuming he upgraded his dex, because why wouldn't you, especially when you're in the final battle. Let's see, what else is there? Oh yeah, also, I should go over the audio, the fading for it, because that was very apparent in the final episode. So as you can tell, here, let me open up Sunshine's as well. Yeah, so as you can tell, every time that someone got ahead, I would switch the audio from either -78 dBs to -12. Then -12 makes it so that the audio for the game isn't overlapping our audio from like a microphone or something like that. Kind of like how I'm using the music in the background currently to not overpower my voice. And about every time that we would get ahead of each other, I'd add little transition animations just so that like whoever's ahead has the game audio, and that was a good indication. While in this series I didn't add like a little audio thing in the corner like I did for Pokemon Let's Go, I didn't think it was entirely necessary for this one, especially since Dark Souls 3 only really has music with boss fights. Other than that, it's really just sound effects, noises, enemies stabbing you to death or something like that. And there's just not a lot of background noise, so I didn't find it necessary to add the little audio icon. But yeah, we switched back in the final episode. We switched back and forth about like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 8 times. And that's honestly because we were both on the final boss, and it was very neck and neck. I'm obviously not going to go over on who won. If you've already watched the series, you already know. Just because, hey, watch the series, please. I've put a lot of effort into it, and it'd be great, you know. I'd appreciate it. And sorry about that. But yeah, with like the weapons here and like all the other stuff. So the prepping for this, since we're kind of going near the end of this The last thing I kind of have to explain is the... Oh, thank you, Adobe, for auto-saving that. I don't want you to. Last thing we'll go over is just the outro. But if I go into here, yeah, you can tell how long it's been going into Okami. But yeah, like there was a lot of prep work for this, and as you can tell, I kind of had like, yeah, here are the stat PNGs. I named them accordingly just so I wouldn't mess them up, and like the PNGs for each episode for our stats when it came to changing. Some weren't too bad, but like stuff like episode 1 or like I think episode 15 wasn't too bad. Yeah, and also with the with like the thumbnails, for instance, like as you can see, the initial icon for Dark Souls 3 battles, I actually used the animation for it in the intro, but I just made it a PNG instead because you can do that in the encoding settings when rendering it, and kind of try to stick to a kind of specific theme for each thumbnail in a sense. But yeah, like each episode, as you can tell, I had to render episode 2 twice because issues. Luckily it wasn't too bad, and like I kind of use like the dark sign sigil as kind of reference of what I wanted to do, because initially I wanted to use the dark sign instead of the solar eclipse in the background, and I ended up just using the solar eclipse because it's just way better. But yeah, like for stuff like this was kind of like the first thing I went with. Obviously it wasn't that great. The boxes were too small for what information I wanted to put into there, and it just overall wouldn't fit all the information. And I ended up just making the PNGs separate and stuff like that. Yeah, like here's it separate here. Here's kind of like the sample when I was showing it to Sunshine just to get some input, because like his input is definitely necessary for how these things are flowed. If I'm struggling on something, he'll like throw an idea to me, and there's like a couple ideas in this series that he definitely thought of. Like I think if I remember correctly, like the solar eclipse was kind of his idea. He was like, oh, why don't you try this? I was like, well, I'll see if I can. I'm not sure if I can replicate that, which luckily I was able to for the series. And also like here, this is kind of where I got our little icons. I had to like erase the background here just so we could use it properly, and just to make sure that things worked correctly. I'm not sure why I had this. Oh yeah, because I was trying to get like the little box and it wasn't working correctly. This was kind of like a failed thing trying to get the art for this. I was able to find a much easier method to do so. And here's like the little the little menu icons for the ashes, because those are separate from these little things over here. And here's kind of the text that we used for it as well. A lot of separate PNGs, which I probably could have made it easier for myself, honestly. But yeah, at the beginning, here's Sunshine's set on what he started with. I didn't really touch this until we recorded our first session of it. Oopsies. And somewhere mine is here. Ah, yeah, here we go. But yeah, I kind of like went back and forth. I kind of wanted... The Dark Sword was kind of like the reference of what I wanted to use for it. I almost went for just using the rapier, but I decided that it's just too unfamiliar for me, and I wanted to try out the Great Scythe. I didn't really use the dagger much. I was kind of surprised by that. That's something that I thought would be super beneficial, but it ended up not really being too much because this did more damage anyway. I mean, it's probably because I didn't upgrade this, but who knows? And let's see. But yeah, I was trying to like get references from like the menu, like for our little background box for our footage right there, and I ended up using this little thing here. Yeah, this is like one of the major things that helped me push forward with the project, was like finding like these stockpile photos of stuff. And also here's the background that I used. Obviously the solar eclipse is covering the initial thing here. But yeah, as you can tell, I tried to get this into a thumbnail. It didn't work too well, considering that Photoshop was being super finicky about it, and it was kind of big yikes. Like, some of these thumbnails I don't think were good compared to others. Like this one is probably the best, and I'm glad because it was the final episode, just because like Solar Cinder and stuff like that, and kind of getting the little solar eclipse there in the background, which is like super nice in comparison to what it was. And yeah, so here's the Photoshop file for the footage layout. It's honestly just the text itself. There's really nothing more to it, at least for what I use for each episode, because in reality I only need the text. While the other stuff here I already have into a PNG, just so it's easier on me. Now, lastly, we have the outro. So the outro is very similar to the intro in the sense that I just kind of faded everything out and then faded the outro footage in. And I don't remember how many frames it was, but yeah, it was like kind of like, I'm just estimated like 11 to 13 frames, and kind of had this little thing right here. It's honestly the same as the intro, so if I go here, I kind of use the boxes for any type of link for people to click. This is kind of where the subscribe button was, and I just had it play in the background and then eventually fade out for like the 20-second mark, because on YouTube the end screen notifications to click are about like 20 seconds long exactly. So I made the outro exactly that, just to make it easier when I wanted to put the end screens up, and just kind of take it from there when posting each episode. But yeah, anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this little dive into what goes into our battle series. If you want me to do more of these, I'll be glad to after each series. Like I said, I did want to do a Pokemon Let's Go Battles one, because that was the first time I ever really started going hardcore into what kind of details we do, because Pokemon Let's Go was definitely a step up from what was the last one before that? It was Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild I only went into Adobe Premiere, while Pokemon Let's Go kind of made me start doing Adobe After Effects and having that kind of stuff. But anyway, thank you guys for watching this video, and on that note, see you guys later.